He was hard-nosed, and West Marshall football tradition was developed under him as being hard-nosed, tough, hustling kids. And that tradition is carried over through a lot of years.
Yeah, I've had a pretty wide variety of experiences through my 56 years.
Let's just start off. When we talk about the Friday Night Blitz coming along, I mean, you and I always feel like we have a lot in common, and we don't get to talk about it a lot, but just the passion for the history of it, what high school football means, the legacy, wanting to save it forever. I mean, you and I have a lot in common. And I think your reverence for it, though, that you're still kind of the go-to leader right now on the football coach's side, and it's special to you. Where did this come from?
Well, I retired from the executive secretary position, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, something like that. And Brian Wilkin from New Fonda took over, but the Football Coaches Association has been something that's been important to me since probably early 70s. And I've been involved with that as a board member, then as a president, and then executive secretary, and now I would say I'm just an old guy that goes to the meetings now, but
I don't think that's the case.
But whatever role I have now is pretty minimal. I still have a couple committees and go to the meetings and enjoy what's going on, in high school football, and enjoy the people that are on the board, and I've made some great friends and have some really, really lasting relationships of people who I've met through the board of directors and through the Coaches Association. So it's one of those things that you got involved in, and it's been a big part of my life, and I still enjoy being part of it.
It keeps you young, and we went up to the Dome, made sure we got all those highlights, and got that '99 championship. But then we started doing this football show. I think you lost at North Polk. Your quarterback got hurt, and you still came to the studio. And I think you're one of the people that made it a kind of realistic expectation and a goal that coaches would show up.
Well, I think the show, when it first started, there was nothing like that in the state of Iowa at the time, and I think it was a great thing to promote high school football. I think, number one, a lot of scores you could check on scores and find out who won, whether it be an opponent or a friend coaching or whatever it might be. It was easy access to finding scores, and I think it was always interesting, for me anyway, to watch whoever was on the show to see what they had to say about their game or about high school football in general. And I think it was a great promotional thing and did a lot as far as promoting high school football in Iowa.
Yeah, 25 years. Now it's just our local market. We discussed this with Coach Swenson a little bit. 8, 13, and 5. I mean, they've covered the high schools. I don't know if anybody, and I think part of that is because our high school football programs, our towns, and our communities we're just a different state, aren't we? We're very special.
Well, we have Midwestern values, and the schools in our communities are important, but we're also a rural state. You take 3 or 4 cities out of Iowa, and we're very rural, and to those small towns, Friday night football is a very important thing. It's a rallying point, and they get behind their football teams, win or lose, and it's really an important thing. I think somebody made a statement one time. Once rural Iowa towns lose their school, which is happening way too often now, but it's part of the times. Once they lose their school, they kind of lose contact with what's going on. They don't have that rallying point anymore. So it's important. It's an important part of life in Iowa.
I think football is just the identity that starts the school, that keeps the pride going, regardless. If you were from State Center, and I mean, you talked about Doug Pinkham and all that in one of your pre-games, and whether that is part of it or your school maybe struggles with it or it has flashes, you still own it. You know, that's your pride. It's always interesting, you know. Now, when Jerry was in Melcher, and when my uncles were playing, and he's got a son now, my uncles has got a grandson that's a pretty good football player in Pleasantville, but, you know, there were times where we're really good or you're not good, but you own it, you know, like my other cousins that went through, you know, we'd beat them 60-0. They're like, well, you know, we had you until the first quarter. So, I mean, but there's just a connection with what football does, and if towns like Melcher or State Center or whatever lose that, that's where it's kind of, it gets tough, but they'll have to move on to whatever that next step is. But it's special.
Yeah, it is. It's, you know, I had a superintendent tell me one time, or he asked me, I guess, at the start of the football season, he said, what kind of football team are we going to have? And I said, I think we could be pretty good if everything works out. And he said, well, I hope so, because you realize that sets the tone for the whole year. And if you're bad, we could have a bad year. If you're good, we could have a good year. And I said, well, thanks a lot for putting that on me. All right.
And I think that's essentially the gist of it. At least we have that to look forward to, or we have that connection. I do believe the effort and the culture, whether the wins and losses are there, ultimately will guide those communities too. And you kind of see that a little bit. The culture piece was something that you did well. Where did this come from? Because I think when you got to State Center, you talked about, you know, the gentleman that had been there. Doug was amazing, and when he came there in '62 before the playoffs, you know, you had that foundation. So in one of your pre-games when we do our Blitz Extras and we'd mic you up, you reference that. But where was your foundation for this small town? I love this. This is an important part of my life. Where'd that come from?
Well, I grew up in Hamburg, Iowa, which is as close to Missouri and Nebraska as you can get and still be considered in Iowa. And sports were pretty successful there, and it was very important to the community. And I think you know, when I was a kid growing up, I didn't have trucks to play with. I just had a ball. That's all I wanted. Give me a ball and I'll be just fine. And sports were always the priority in my life ever since I was probably 7 or 8 years old. So, and the small town part of it is I think part of who I am, I guess. I grew up in Hamburg, Iowa, and I coached in Essex, and I coached in Trainer, and went to Sioux City, but then, you know, at West Marshall. So all those communities, with the exception of Sioux City, are pretty much rural Iowa places, you know. So I guess I, you know, grew up as a small town kid, and I guess that's really who I am.
Yeah. In all your travels, you and I could bring up the all-time coaches wins list right here, and you and I could probably talk the rest of the day, because you'd whether we'd hit Walt Fiegel or Jerry Pizzetti or Ed Thomas, all the things that all the friends that you have and all the connections and all the stories. What a great decision to go into high school football coaching for you.
Well, you know, my number one goal when I was growing up was to be a Major League Baseball player.
Who was your team then?
Baseball,
were you
you know,
St. Louis guy?
I think the first that I can remember, I'm a huge Dodger fan, all right? And why I became a Dodger fan living in Hamburg, Iowa, they were still in Brooklyn, I have no idea.
Was there a player? Was it Jackie
No,
Robinson?
I can't. No, I don't know. I don't know. The only one that I can think of at the very beginning that I really liked was an outfielder by the name of Sandy Ambrose.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't, you know,
Did you get his card probably, maybe?
Oh, yeah. I chewed a lot of bubble gum and made a lot of trips to the dentist, you know, back then. But why I'm a Dodger fan, I have no idea. They were in Brooklyn, but that was my goal, was to be a Major League Baseball player. And then when I went to Iowa State to play baseball, those guys that threw the curveball convinced me that maybe there would be another option that would be better for me than to keep that goal. So I was a PE major, so that was, you know, the next thing I wanted to be. So, and I don't know, I was always kind of fascinated with football coaches, I guess, college football coaches. Baseball was probably always my favorite sport, but I think I always wanted to coach football. Why why, I don't know. I was just kind of fascinated with guys like Bear Bryant and,
Yeah.
and Joe Paterno and those guys. So when I had the opportunity to get my first job as a head coach in Essex, Iowa, that was my second dream come true.
That is a big deal. And your family's just, has it been tough doing both of those all those years? I mean, no, you're on the backside of it now, but was it pretty natural for your family?
Well, I think, I've been blessed through the years with a family that's been sports minded, and they've always been supportive and always been involved in athletics themselves. So it's really been pretty easy, I guess. It never been, I mean, you miss out on some things that, that people in other professions don't miss out on. But, my two kids went everywhere I went if there was no place else for them to go, I guess. I remember my son going to football practice when we practiced early in the morning, and he might be 3 or 4 years old, and he'd have a couple of the players pull up a couple of big dummies up, and he'd just lay down on the dummies and take a nap, and then he'd wake up and be ready to go. So, I mean, they've been a part of it. It's just as much as I have.
Yeah, it's really special. And you can really see for some of you guys that put 50 years in, or almost 50 years, and you've put in more than that now, the family just seems to glow when they talk about your commitment to it. So,
well, I've never looked at it as being a job. I guess I can honestly say I don't think I've ever worked a day in my life. I'm still probably a kid, being involved in a boys game,
Yeah.
and probably there's just a lot of people probably waiting for me to grow up. But I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, and I love it because every year at the before we go to the Dome games, we get to see. I'm going to play this for you. Just tell me what you think of this. This actually, it has nothing to do with the Blitz, but when we started doing Dome Dynasty, and we used to do some of the behind-the-scenes things, the Blitz Extra, where we'd come to the games and do a whole recap, half hour of the game for the next week. I love doing that. I ran out of time, and we got some video of you from one of those. But this is Kevin Cooney doing the open for our Dome Dynasty. Some of the documentary series we do. Have you ever seen this? Just let me know if you have.
It's mid-November in Iowa. The cornfields have been cleared. Harvest is done. Now the Dome takes center stage. Only 24 of Iowa's 336 high school football teams will enter this arena with a chance to win a championship. For some teams, it's a rare dream come true. For others, it's an annual expectation. This tradition of excellence creates an inherent advantage. It's this power to perform at an elite level year after year that defines these teams as a Dome Dynasty.
So I didn't know if you've ever seen that.
I haven't seen that, but that's neat.
Yeah, I think it captures like the chase because it doesn't matter, State Center. It doesn't really, the Dome Dynasty term really doesn't matter as much. There's teams that obviously are blessed and lucky and get there over and over and over. But then there's teams like State Center, Pleasantville. I mean, we haven't won a championship, but these are historically awesome programs. But I just think that having Kevin voice that was something that was really special for us when we first put it together. But even a couple of years ago, when we do these little segments, we came up and did West Marshall and PCM, there's coach. But the thing I loved about it was I told Jesse, I'm like, hey, go get Winkler over there. He's helping. And these are the moments that make me smile, is because you recognized, dang it, they're taking my picture here. And so you stopped and gave us a little smile once you knew that you were on camera. So the amount of quality of content that we have, the way things keep getting better, and the amount that we have to invest in, just these slow-mo shots that they do for all the networks, and you just taking that time to smile. That's all we needed. We only needed you to smile for just a little bit so that we could capture that. But I just love that stuff. And, the stuff that we did with Coach, it still holds up a little bit. But these relationships that you have with coaches. You were right there. Did the state, I never asked you this, did you and Ed talk about this, or did the state get involved as far as having that first home game, making you come up there? I think we asked you that on the trip. It was already preset?
That game was scheduled. And no, the state had nothing to do with it. It's just the way it worked out.
Yeah.
You know, I remember.
Which was perfect, but not perfect, but perfect.
Well, yeah. You know, it was an unusual experience because, you know, for us it was another football game. For them, it was much more than that. You know, and I remember when they figured out that we would be the first school to come play on their field after the tornado. Ed called me, and he was all pumped up. You know, he said, "Hey, do you realize you're going to be the first ones to play here?" And I said, "I realize that, and I'm not near as excited about it as you are." But it was a totally different atmosphere and situation that I've been in all the years I've coached, because there was just, you know, well, ESPN was there and the media coverage surrounding it, and just realizing what that game meant to them to be back on their football field was just kind of surreal, really. You know,
It was almost beyond Parkersburg too. I mean,
like
there was an element to it.
Oh yeah, and I had a media person even ask me this. They said before the game, probably about a week before the game, actually, they came down and did a little story on the game, and the person said, won't you feel bad if you win the game? I said, no. I said, we're in a different position than AP is right now. I said, it's another football game for us. But I said, you know, that's what it is to our kids. You know, it's not like they experienced what AP has experienced to get to this point, I said. But I understand where you're coming from, but no, we won't feel bad if we would win the game.
Yeah.
You know?
We had a great visit with some of you in Parkersburg last fall. So it's already been a year since we did that. And you and Ed were close, but since we got you on the podcast and we got it live, and it's a little, he was a bad driver. Was there some other, I mean, he wasn't, was that what you, I mean, there's some things he wasn't good at.
Well,
I mean, he was good at telling people where, you know, where the playoff pairing should be and who should play who. You guys had that figured out, but was he a bad driver? Was that?
Well, he was a different driver, I'll say that. If I would have been his driver ed teacher, he probably might have had to retake it, you know. But he could drink coffee, read the paper, and drive a car at the same time.
Yeah.
But he always had a lot of things going on, and he had a lot of things going on when he was driving too. If you know, he would be if he was still alive, he would be one of the guys that would get fined for texting while he's driving, I'm sure. But he was interesting driving down the road, you know, and he could carry on a conversation while he was doing that too.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun, and for those people and we'll probably put some video on before we start talking about it, just to remind people that we're talking about Coach Thomas. As you look back on the Blitz too, we've had a lot of cast of characters go in and out of it, but John and I and Kevin Hall, who was in here, we've had Dave Zavalin, I mean, we had Zuba Mahente, who's still on ESPN every single night. You can't get rid of him. He's always there. He was in, I mean, we've had a lot of talented people, but do you think it was we'd still be doing there's still plenty of highlights would have happened, but do you think that catapulted some of the programs or helped Central Iowa or the state of Iowa? Do you think it was influential at all?
I don't think there's any question about that, Dave. I think any type of media coverage that can be given to high school football helps the sport. You know, I mean, kids like that, communities like that, coaches like that, you know, and if somebody can turn on a show after the game and watch what other people did and listen to some other people's views of their game or high school football, I think that does nothing but help the game and puts the game out there in front of the public and helps promote it.
I think the thing that I learned the most, and is why I'm still in it, so I'm still interested in it, it's like why I want you to come down here and talk to me. when I would see your names, when I'd study it, and then when I met you guys, and then I realized how close you all were, how much you shared information, and how much the doing the right thing for the kids in the community was above winning. When from the outside looking in, I think people were like, oh, well, he wants to get so many wins and all that, and it had nothing to do with it. I think that's been the draw for me, and I'm thankful that I learned that, and it made me even more excited to be part of it.
Well, I think, obviously winning's important, and I think it's probably the pressure to win today is much, much greater than when I started, and I think there's a lot
Even though you felt it, it's just different, yeah.
Yeah, I think, I think TV and, has had something to do with that. I think the playoffs have had a lot to do with that, and I think camps have had a lot to do with that. I think parents send their kids to camp and they expect their kid to be successful, and then on the other side of that, they expect them to be on a good team. So I think there's a lot of reasons for that, but the coaching is not about winning at all costs. You take a lot of pride and a lot of satisfaction in seeing somebody come in as a 5'6", 102-pound freshman that, you think, oh my gosh, this kid is never going to make it, And then by the time he's a senior, he's 6'2" and 190, and he's a really good football player.
Yeah.
And I think you take a lot of satisfaction in seeing kids grow as a football player and grow as an individual, and down the road when they're gone, I think one of the real satisfying things are, graduation announcements and invitations and wedding invitations and those types of things that mean a lot to you as you go on, that kids remember you and consider you a part of their life and want you to continue to be a part of their life.
There's got to be times where you're like, I'm trying to put this together. Or does everybody that reaches out, do they automatically click? Do you remember where they are? Because, you probably get a lot of contact.
Well, it's getting a little more difficult, all right, because, I find myself sometimes when a name comes up, then I have to stop and think, all right, was this a Essex, a trainer?
Essex
or
trainer.
Sioux City? But, most of the places I've been have been small communities, so that makes it a little bit easier, to keep track and put two and two together and come up with the right answer. But no, as time goes on, you got to stop and think a little bit about, who it is. And I'll have, kids come up to me and they'll say, do you remember me? And I'll go, my answer is, if I don't, I'll say, well, you're going to have to help me a little bit. So then they'll give me a hint or something, and then I can figure it out. But no, it becomes a little more difficult as time goes on.
As we look to the future of Iowa Football Coach Association, we'll talk about that a little bit. We won't run through all these names. We'll save that for another podcast. But when we started doing the Blitz and I asked the coaches to come in, I never had anybody turn me down. I never asked Pizzetti because I knew I wouldn't get his rear end there. He's, he's from Marion County, and he didn't want to get out there. So we'd always, take the Blitz to him. I could probably get Ryan to come in if I was. We don't go back to studio anymore, but, so that was like asking my dad to do something. But it didn't matter who it was; they came in. Well, it always surprised me. I never had to talk anybody into it.
Well, I think any coach enjoys having recognition for their football program and for their kids and their community, So I think it would be very unusual if somebody wouldn't want that opportunity, to promote their program and anything you can do to get recognition for your community and your kids. I think, any coach is willing to do that.
Yeah. So I wasn't a good salesman or anything. They just knew it was the right thing to do. Gary talked about that a little bit last time, because I always thought most of the people that would come in, whether it's you or Gary, they have no ego, like some of the times when you see the college basketball scene or whatever, sometimes the coaches were always like, making it more about them than the programs. And so I was always like worried that somebody'd be like, well, I'm not doing that. I don't want to be on TV, but everybody said yes.
Yeah. Well, I just think it's, I think football coaches appreciate you people who do take your time to promote the game and work with our kids and the coaches to get them recognition. And I think they're appreciative of it, and think we owe that to you to make your job as easy as we can.
We could. I mean, I've always wanted to do talk about some historic stuff, because you and I have talked about some of the best players we've ever seen at the Dome, this and that, and it's been really interesting. But as we wrap this up, what's next for Iowa High School football and the Coaches Association? Is it just going to keep? We got to keep grinding it out. We got to keep doing things the right way. Is steady the course, or?
Well, yeah, I think the game right now is I think kind of in a new era here a little bit with what's going on in college football.
Yeah.
And specialization, I think, is a concern.
Yep.
I think we went through a period of time where specialization was big, and then I think we kind of got away from that.
Yep.
But I think we're getting back to that now, to where we're seeing a little more specialization, and I think one of our biggest concerns is the NIL.
Yeah.
Because
how do we plan for that?
I'm sure it's showing up in high school, and everything trickles down, from college into high school eventually. But I think the future of the association is to continue to try to promote high school football within the rules, and try to keep it going in the right track where we're an amateur sport, and make it for the kids and see the kids have a good experience while they're competing in football.
We're lucky to have the Dome. That's a great thing. You really helped open my eyes to something when we expanded the playoffs. I'm never against any playoff expansion. I'm never against kids getting that opportunity to play more games. The pundits that are like, well, they only get, we can't let mediocre teams in. You kind of straightened me out on that. And I look back on my high school career where we only got 6 losses in 4 years and we didn't go to the playoffs. So it's a great opportunity to give those kids. And so I think we're in a good spot there with the classes and all that. I mean, I don't know if you ever see that changing, or you have any opinion on that.
Well, I have always been a proponent of more teams in the playoffs.
Yeah.
When we started out with 4. That was how many were in it to begin with. Then we went to 8, then to 16, then to 32. Then we went back, and now we're back to 32 in most classes. But there's nothing wrong with kids experiencing being in postseason play.
Yeah. No matter what the record is.
There's nothing wrong with that. Does it create some mismatches? Yes, it does. But I think most kids who have ever participated in the playoffs, regardless of the outcome of the game, I think they would say that it was a good experience. They were glad they had that opportunity, But I think we're probably at numbers where we're probably going to stay now. I don't see it changing in the near future. But postseason play is a good experience for kids, and that's kind of why we're here, is to give kids a good experience. But there were times when we first started that undefeated teams didn't make the playoffs.
Boy, we were one of them, yeah.
And then there was a time where when we went to 32, there was instances where there were 8-1 teams that didn't get in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And that's wrong, in my opinion. That's wrong. We want to give every good team an opportunity to compete. And there's been 7-2 teams win state titles.
Oh boy.
Does it create some mismatches, and does it look bad maybe to some people that think it's watered down? Probably so. I understand that part of it. But I also understand that postseason play is important to kids, and there's nothing wrong with giving them that experience.
Oh, man. Yeah, I look back on it, too, and I think there's some great stories, populate from that, whether you won the game or not. We've heard some really good kids that maybe were on the wrong end of those playoff games, and they loved it. They thought it was, it's kind of a badge of honor. They remember it well. So, That's for us crazy people that played the sport and like to get hit, I guess, and love the game.
But there's been, I'll take Marshalltown, for instance. About 10 years ago, they were in the finals.
Holy smokes.
And I've been to, except for COVID, the COVID year, I've been to, every playoffs up in the Dome. And that night when Marshalltown played in that game was a perfect example how important that high school playoffs can be to a community, because there's never been a crowd like that in the Dome for any high school football game ever, because
for them to take over almost both sides.
One whole side and part of the other one was all blue that night. And
gives me goosebumps thinking about it.
That was a great example of how important and what a great experience that can be for a community and kids and coaches.
Yeah, that dots it. I think you might be coming up on almost 20 years of that. That was 2009. Whew.
I lose track of time a little bit anymore.
Well, yeah, I mean, we showed some of the clips of you from the Blitz. I mean, that was almost 12 years ago. And then, it's 12 years ago that we were doing that Blitz Extra, I think, with you and Coach Hinkle. And, I mean, we could go on and on about some of these great people and friends. We'll let him know from up top that you got him pretty good that night. So that was that ornery sucker. You got him 58-0 that night, I think.
We were good. we were really good friends, and we had a lot of great conversations. A lot of great conversations.
Yeah, I miss him. He picked on me though. I think he bullied me a little bit, but I
he was capable.
But I liked
he
that.
Was capable.
I liked that about him. He let you know that right away that's how the friendship was going to go. He's a good one. Well, anything else that you want to add before we turn you loose and end this podcast, I guess?
Well, I just, like I say, we appreciate everything you've done for high school football. I think sometimes people don't realize how important the media is to the promotion of not only your own football program, but just in the state of Iowa as far as high school football in general, and I think here in Iowa we are really lucky that we have people like you that are committed to high school athletics and do a great job of promoting it in the right way. The media is just like everything else. There's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it, but you dwell on the positive, which I think is very good. And then right now that's and I know it's a sign of the times, but the media can kind of dwell on the negative. As far as, if Iowa or Iowa State lose a game, it seems like the negative really shows up then. But if you've never played football, I don't think people realize it can be a brutal sport. If you don't realize, what you go through, it's a tough sport, and when it's 100 degrees and it's humid and you're in 2 days, or not 2 days anymore, but you're in practice, but excuse me, in basketball, if you get beat by 40, you probably get up the next morning and physically you're probably okay, but if you're a high school football player and you get 50 pointed or the night before, probably when you get up the next morning, you're probably hurting a little bit physically. So there's it's a tough sport, and played by tough people.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate everything that you've done for football in the state of Iowa and all the relationships that we have. But I'm going to see, Parker, do you have anything, for Coach Winkler that you want to ask him before we shut things down?
That I would say my only thing is with the playoffs, right? It's 32. Is that correct right now?
On the smaller classes and stuff now, they're going 8 weeks, and then
gotcha.
And they're playing the 32.
We had Coach Swenson in here 2 weeks ago, and the last 2 seasons, Valley was 4-5 and 3-6, and they made the semis. And you said 7-1 teams, 7-2 teams, 8-1 teams. They're more than capable of winning. And I remember when I watched back in, 2 years ago, when Dome Dynasty said they did a story on you, and you basically said you don't have to be the most talented, you have to be the toughest. Do you think that still applies with all the talent, and specifically like 5A? Do you think you have to be the toughest team instead of the most talented team?
I think it plays a part. But The athletes in Iowa right now, high school football, are better than they've ever been. I mean, we have tremendous athletes. We don't have to take a back seat to any state as far as the quality of athletes that we have now. Now, does Texas have more? Obviously, California has more. But our success rate in major college football and the NFL proves that we can compete with anybody, just not on the same numbers level, you know. But I think Valley's a perfect example of why the playoffs are a great thing. You know, it's kind of like Northern Illinois beating Notre Dame.
Yeah.
I mean, who didn't think that was exciting unless you were a Notre Dame fan, you know? So, but what Valley's done the last couple of years, I think, is a perfect example of why the playoffs are an absolute great thing. You know, nobody expected them to be there, you know, and yet they put it together at the right time. They're well coached, you know, and maybe they got healthy, you know. I think one thing in the playoffs that people don't consider, sometimes it's the healthiest team that ends up winning, not the best team, you know.
Well, Moe, so we see those kids since I've been going up there, you know, and you see a team with crutches, and you're like, oh boy, you know, we got a couple sets of crutches. That's a big deal for a Brit or, you know, a small school or whatever, but it could be a big deal depending on who the kid is. But you talk about the game changing and how innovative, you know, a guy like Gary Swenson, and some of you have adjusted to this and will continue to. You know, I know Butch Peterson, whoever, you know, was out there, they would change up or they would do something different. You know, trying to get Kirk Ferentz to do some of the same things at Iowa, you know. but you know, here's a guy in the game, you know, 2 years ago, Parker, and he'll have another question, but this is a good example. Like, he was going against Dowling. He's like, well, hell, we don't have a chance in overtime. Well, let's go for two. You know, you never thought about that years ago, unless, of course, you were Henkel and you could only go for two. but it was almost like he'd planned that before he got there. And what's interesting is, as he was playing the game last year against Polk, they were starting to dominate the game. They were starting to play better. So he felt like then he went back to it. Well, he was in here 2 weeks ago. He said, I should have went for two. You know, so it's a great game, but it's old school people are evolving in front of our eyes.
Yeah, I think in football, the longer you play, the cream's going to come to the top. So if you are not that cream, then you might, if you get the opportunity, you might want to go for it. You know?
Yeah. He's nothing but honest. That's what I love about him. What else you got? You got anything else?
I got one more. I'm full of questions, I know. Okay, do you know that you are one of the 3 coaches in the state of Iowa that has won a state title for a different school? Did you know that?
Yeah, I'm aware of that.
I mean, that's crazy, you know? Like, that's history. I mean, I'm trying to look up what you guys are talking, and I'm like, I can't even find the other guys' names. I mean, that's got to be...
I think Gary's one.
Gary's one of them. Yep. Spencer and Valley.
Fred Week.
Yeah.
Fred Week.
Fred was at Clear Lake and
GMG
Garwin.
GMG, just north of us.
You know where GMG Garwin is, don't you?
No idea. I'm a West Des Moines kid. Zero clue.
Well, it's... it would fit into probably the campus of Valley of West Des Moines. It's not very big.
Yeah.
Garwin, Green Mountain.
It's interesting that he won it in 79, right? In 99, 20 years apart. So,
you know, I went through a period of time where I started coaching in 68. So we were undefeated in 69, 79, 89, 99. But then in 2009, it didn't work out that way. But yeah, every 9 was we were undefeated in the regular season.
And you probably didn't even get in the playoffs in the 89, right? Yeah.
Yeah, we got beat by Mount Vernon.
Oh yeah. Well.
Mount Vernon. Yep.
Well, Bellamy wasn't bad either.
No. No, he was. You know, he was an interesting guy.
I never got to sit down with him too long. I did a couple post games, but I never really got to sit down with him.
He was not what you would call a social guy.
Yeah. That's okay.
I mean, he stayed to himself quite a bit, but if you'd ever sit down and talk to him, he had a great personality, and he knew football from start to finish. He was a really intelligent guy, football-wise.
So there's so many of those coaches that are intimidating, but once you sit down with them and start talking football, it goes away pretty quick. Bob Howard being one of them. Yeah. I think he scared the hell out of mostly everybody. And I mean, the first time I went down there, I mean, to Sigourney, I was going to show him some of my tapes from their championship, and he looked at me and he kind of gave me the eye, and I was like, this guy doesn't want me here. He's going to beat me up. I called him and he invited me down. He's like, that's fine. But then he didn't say anything to me. But then, shortly afterwards, we became friends after that banquet. But I was scared of him.
Bob's a great guy, but there's one you're not ever going to guess where he's coming from. I mean, he's as black and white as they get, but good guy.
Yeah, I think Jim probably fell in that category. You had to
pretty much
you had
so.
to, you had to get in there and tell your reputation if you didn't see it coming. But that'd be fun sometime. Maybe next time we'll go through and we'll go down this list, and then you can tell me your
Sure.
best Randy Hinkle story. But yeah, I mean, even Jay Roseboom and Tom Wilson, these guys are young, comparatively speaking.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, I tell you what, it's really it's amazing the run that Dowling went on.
Oh boy.
I mean, that's just. I mean, you got to have a lot of luck along the way there. You got to stay healthy and things like that. But to put that together, was 7 years in a row. That's just unheard of anymore.
Because when Kevin did it at Solon and did the 4, we're like, huh. And then it made sense when Marv had his run with Regina. Pretty special time, unbelievable staff. Marv is the best too, because he'll tell you, he don't want to get up in the morning and do everything. He goes, I got these great guys around, but he had that credibility and like I was talking about, the reverence with you, and just a honest and a great person that made connections. So I think it makes sense to be able to do it at that smaller school, at a private school, but in the way the CIML is and the league that we have, it was Dowling still it was kind of impressive.
Well, in a smaller school, sometimes you can get a really good class come in and, that are really talented, and you can go on a run with that class.
You have enough brothers, like, you got
the Sangers and
yeah,
Brett and those people.
yeah.
But at the 5A level, you're probably doing it with, you might have a run of a really good junior class, but you're pretty much doing it with different kids, year in and year out, at least a good number of different kids, because most 5A schools are pretty much senior dominated, but it was impressive. High school coaching in Iowa is good. It's good. It's best.
I don't know how
best it's ever been.
I mean, I don't know how the CIML, when you go to a game and you see Valley and Dowling and Ankeny and how many coaches that's the thing that separates our state. Is these are people that are willing to go to 15 camps a year, understand special teams for nothing. I mean, where do we get these guys?
Yeah, well, 20 years ago, probably, maybe 25 years ago, when we had a shortage of coaches, when the volunteer coaches or the coaching endorsements, you didn't have to be a teacher anymore out of necessity at that time. But, a lot of kids that play football now, they get out and they don't want to get away from it now. So this is a way so they can stay involved, if you're a head coach and you got on your staff 3 or 4 kids that played for you, that's an ideal situation. They know what you're going to say before you say it. So
it's great when they're speaking your language, and then the kids are too.
That's a great situation to be in.
Well, anything else? We're wrapping up this one. I don't know. It's 25 years of celebrating the Blitz and getting to visit with some of my friends.
It's a good thing. The Blitz has been a good thing. Yeah. We appreciate it.
Well, I don't know if I'll see you on a Friday night, but I might see you on the Saturday morning at the same hotel up at the Dome.
Yep, yeah. I'll be there. I'll be there.
Have breakfast together.
I don't plan too far ahead anymore. I'm 78 years old, so I don't.
I feel like you've been getting younger the last 4 or 5, though. I feel like you're getting younger.
I feel good.
I even were going downhill, about 10 years ago, but now you're on your way back.
I feel good. I had a heart procedure here November 1st, 2022, and I feel a lot better since I got that.
You look better. Yeah.
A lot better. I also got 14 grandkids, so I'm seeing a lot of soccer games, flag football games, baseball, softball games.
How do you do this?
Golf cart gets a lot of miles on it when they arrive at the grandpa and grandma's house.
They like to go.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good investment.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I play a lot of golf, but they get more miles than the golf.
It's important that you get off to a fast start. All right? I don't care whether we're on offense or whether we're on defense. Whatever we're on, it's important that we get off to a fast start. Be into the game, be enthusiastic, and be supportive. We go out, wait at the gate, and we'll go out together. Guys, we've waited 3.5 weeks for this. All right? Hey! If you want to be something special, it has to be on that field tonight to start it off.
Here we go! Let's go!
We winners or losers?